You're listening to the RPM Podcast.
Listen to it with your ear holes.
And here we are again, episode 168 of the RPM Podcast. It is April 7th, 2022 at 8:20 p.m. We're still dealing with all this coronavirus stuff. But we wanted to come on and do a quick show with you guys. I'm Scott Riggleman in Manchester, New Jersey at the Edge of Divorce Motorsports Studio. My brother Tim Riggleman is with his two daughters, Alexis and Bailey, up in his studio in Farmingdale, New Jersey. Hey guys, how are you?
Good, we're ready to go.
And we have Joshua Matthews, the producer of the RPM Podcast down in Waretown, New Jersey. How you making out down there, Josh?
I'm good, and I'm going to stay safe and healthy as long as you stay up there on that screen.
Yeah, well, we're definitely social distancing with this podcast. You know, we're all in our separate studios. We've been talking for a while now. We've been wanting to do something really special with the show. We figured this was the perfect time to do it without people racing right now. We've been wanting to do something called the Local Legends Racing Series, where we had some of the old-timer guys come on that, raced in previous years to talk about their racing career. So we figured tonight would be the perfect night to do it. And we got lucky. Our very special guest, our very first guest is very special, is Charlie Kremer Jr. How you doing, Charlie?
Very good, Scott.
We really appreciate you coming on. We won't keep you too long. We know it's already 8:30 already, but we really appreciate you coming on. And we just want to talk a little bit about your racing career. Just to rattle off a few things. You're a four-time modified champion at Wall Stadium, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you won it in 1968, 1969, 72, and 79.
That's correct.
You also have 64 wins in the modified division at that racetrack. You had 21 winning seasons. Your very first win came on September 11th, 1965, and your last win was July 7th, 2001.
That's correct.
I know you won modified feature events in in many different race cars, not only your own famous yellow number 77, but championship-wise, were they all won in the 77 car that you and your father owned?
Yes.
Okay, so all the championships you won with the family car, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I know a lot of your feature wins were also won with the yellow 77 car, but I remember you winning with different cars at Wall Stadium. I mean, the latest win you won, I remember you winning with the purple 58 car that was owned by the McGill family. We also remember you winning with a red 84 car. You won with Howard Harvey's cars, Wales cars. I mean, you had a lot of different rides over there.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us how your family got started in racing? I know your father owned race cars before you raced.
Well, my father moved down the area from the Bronx to Tom's River about 1945, and he built a garage there. And then about 1947, 48, they had a dirt track down on Whitty Road right across the street from the YMCA before the Parkway was there. It was just an oval built in a gravel pit. And they used to race there with Bill Airy and Richie Hall, Bill Hall, and all those guys. And that's where they started. And then what happened, Wall Stadium got built in 49, and they went from there to Wall Stadium.
So Whitty Road, that's the Whitty Road that's right in Tom's River, not far from your shop today?
Yeah, it's right next to the Parkway, actually, Whitty Road, between Route 9 and Old Freehold Road.
Josh, you know where that's right?
Yeah, been down that road many, many times.
Charlie, just so you know, Josh's family owns the farm right on Todd Road, and I know you guys live over on Todd Road now, too, so you guys are practically neighbors.
Okay.
We're the ones that had the cows for many years.
Did that racetrack on Whitty Road in Tom's River have a name?
Oh, man. I don't know whether the track had a name, but they did have a club. I don't remember the name of it right at the moment. I was only like 4 years old.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because Dick Barney tells a similar story too. His family ran the Lakewood Racers Club, and they had a small track right on Hope Chapel Road in Lakewood that was basically in a gravel pit, and they raced there. And he said they raced there right up until the time where they really had to make it a real racetrack. He said the state police showed up at their house one day and said, "Listen, you guys run that racing club over there?" And they're like, "Yeah." They're like, "Listen, we don't mind you doing that over there, but But for you to do that, you got to put up guardrails and catch fences and stuff like that. And once it got expensive like that, where they actually had to build a real racetrack, they stopped racing there.
Uh-huh.
So I'm assuming that.
That's probably about the time we went to Wall Stadium.
Yeah, and that's how Wall Stadium has survived all these racetracks, these little racing club racetracks. They were willing to put the money in to pave the track, put the grandstands in, put fencing up, make it safe. And a lot of these clubs, when Wall Stadium was built, they didn't have to race in the gravel pits anymore. They all just went over to Wall Stadium and started racing. Do you remember who your father's first driver was?
Yeah, Bill Hall.
And was that with a yellow 77 then? Did you guys always have the yellow 77?
Yes, it is.
Can you kind of tell us how that color combination started out? I know your father was into Cadillacs. I always heard it was a Cadillac color. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. It was an interior color. He always had Cadillacs. I guess he liked the color yellow, so he painted it that color. And
so it wasn't an exterior color, it was actually an interior color?
It was an interior color from the Cadillac, yep.
Really? Do you still know the part number, or do you have the part number, or have you ever painted it?
No, I never kept that. The last car was flame yellow, was an exterior color.
So flame yellow was the color of the cars?
Yeah, like, what we had lately.
Yeah. And recently, Charlie found some stuff in a shed behind your shop, and they basically used the number 7s for the car from the Seagram 7s label, the Seagram 7 liquor label. Is that the way you got the font of the number styles back then?
That was the original style of the number. He used them for like a template.
Yeah, he had to cut them out and everything, right? Trace them out. Do you know why he picked the number 77, or was that assigned to him, or was there any significance with that number?
It was his lucky number always. He always played the number if he went to Atlantic City or anything like that. The phone number was DI9 1977. He always walked the seaside. He'd play 7. He'd always win.
And I know today your shop business number is still at 4277. The last 4 numbers are 77.
Right. We called up for a fax number one time. The lady says, "You don't want this number." I said, "Why?" And the last 4 digits was 7777.
You're like, perfect. So that number has been showing up in your family for a long time.
Yeah, and then when I was in Florida, when I had my house down there, people be trying to pass me and get in front of me, and as soon as they get in front of me, their license plate would have a 77 on it. It would just happen over and over and over and over. Even anybody with me, they're just going, "This is crazy."
Yeah. All racers have that. Everybody's number shows up to them every once in a while. Me and Nancy will go away on vacation. We'll get a hotel room, and sure enough, the hotel room numbers are like 09 or 89. Like those numbers are showing up in your life. It's pretty neat how that works out. Yeah. I know your father had a couple other drivers too before you started driving. Do you recall any of the other drivers he had?
Oh man, he had nothing coming back to me at the moment.
Wasn't one named Peanut Wardell or something like that?
Yeah, Peanut Wardell was the driver, the last driver before I started to drive.
Right. Did he have feature wins before you started driving?
My father had from 49 to when I started to drive, he had about 5. 49 to 63.
Okay. I know there was a little. I know you helped work on the car for a long time. From hearing stories from towing for you guys, and I remember you saying that you always wanted to drive, but your father wouldn't let you drive at first. And finally, you got to the point you said, "Listen, you're either going to let me drive this car, or I'm going to go drive someone else's car." How old were you when you first started driving?
21.
So, and that's what I mean. Like these kids today, they start at 5, 6 years old. So here you didn't get your chance to race until you were 21 years old.
Well, I wanted to drive when I was 18, and I was working on the car probably when I was about 8 years old. But the parents he had a sign for me, and he wouldn't sign for me, so I waited till I was 21. And I got to 21. I said, I'm going to drive a race car next year. He said, no, you're not. I said, well, I'm going to drive somebody's race car tomorrow, this year, and I'm going to beat yours.
So
he gave it.
So what happened to Peanut then? They just told Peanut that you were taking the car over?
Basically, Peanut started to help his son, and they built a car for the son. Peanut's son at that time.
Now, your father never drove the car himself. He was always just the owner?
No, he did drive the car at the gravel pit.
Oh, he did?
When he started, but he never knew his real father. He never met him. So he drove it a couple times, then he had nothing to back up with. He just had his mother and his stepfather, and that's all he had. So he figured if he ever got hurt, he was going to hurt everybody. So he got somebody else to drive it.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting story. And it's just weird. Like today you can race at 18 without getting your parents to sign off on you. But if you're 16, you need a signature. Back then, if you were 18, you needed a signature from your parents for you to race? 18,
until you were 21. 18 to 21, you need a signature.
It's
but back then you could buy beer, right?
Up for the military. You could sign up for the military at 17 or 18 on your own, but you couldn't drive a race car until you were 21.
Yeah, you could get shot, but you couldn't drive the car.
Another cool fact about your family, you're very, and you said your dad was a Cadillac man and he enjoyed Cadillac cars, but you also raced Fords a lot. Why did you guys choose the Ford over like Chevy powered stuff back then?
My father was a Ford guy. He started with flatheads in the original cars, and then they worked his way up from there. So he was a diehard Ford man.
So even when you were winning all the races in the Pinto at Wall Stadium, that was with a Ford engine?
Was a Ford at the beginning, and then we changed to a Chevrolet. When Ford went out of racing, they eliminated all the high performance parts.
Oh, okay. So then you were kind of forced to switch over to a Chevy.
Yeah. Well, they sold us like regular connecting rods for Ford's rods. Like they used to have, special rods for Daytona and all that. And they would, two motors only would last. The first motor lasted 7 weeks, and we thought it just broke. But then the next one only lasted 7 weeks too. So
you couldn't get good racing rods or pistons anymore?
Yeah, they weren't making any parts like they were.
When you were racing a Ford, I know like the big block Chevys were 427s back then. What was a Ford big block engine?
It started, we built it ourselves. What I used was a 427 Daytona block, and it had a 428 crank in it, and it made it 448 cubic inches.
Was that carburetor, or did you have a fuel injection back then?
It was, they didn't make a Ford injection, like Hillborn didn't make an injection for it. So we had an Algon throttle body, and then I bought the fuel injection off of the Purple 4 for the 312. And I took all the parts off of that and put it in my fuel injection and made that work on the big block.
Wow.
So you had a 448 cubic inch engine with fuel injection.
Methanol fuel injection.
You ran on methanol.
Yep.
You think that was a handful, Josh?
I'm giggling just hearing it. So,
Charlie, can you explain how it worked back in the day? A lot of people don't understand how the rules worked back then. Back when there was a weight to cubic inch rule.
No rules.
No rules?
No rules.
When did they go?
The only rule they had was height of the car. Then they got around to weight eventually.
Right.
And then they just had the height of the car, the inside of the car, and stuff like that. Because when we first started, there was plenty of room in the car, and it kept shrinking down,
Right. So when you first started racing, it was just the height. The only rule was the height of the car. There was a height measurement, and that was it. Everything else was legal.
Yeah, height measurement. And when they first started, like 1950, you actually had to have the fenders on the car.
Okay.
It came with the car.
oh,
In 64, if you look at one of the initial pictures, you'll see I kind of fudged on it a little bit. And I just had a little bracket made with a little 12 by 8 piece of aluminum on it. Looked like a fender.
Yeah. I remember that the fenders kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller, but technically you still had fenders on the car. But didn't they go to a cubic inch rule where if you were over so many cubic inches in your motor, you had to add like 9 pounds or something like that?
They had when we finally got to the one part, there was no rules up in years later. You know what I mean? But you had sportsman cars with 305 engines with a 4-valve, and they could run methanol, and like Parker Bone with the 6-cylinder, he could run methanol and multi-carburetors. But they started in the front, and the modified started in the back. So you can imagine what that was.
Yeah. Imagine if they tried doing that now, Josh, starting to
that's what the sportsman light came on.
It just takes patience.
Charlie, would basically be like today, like the crate sportsman division starting in front of the Wall Stadium modifieds in a race, right?
Exactly. It would be exactly like that. And you had to like pick your way through while they were holding everything up.
Now, would they declare 2 winners in that race? Like, say, Parker Bone finished 7th, but he was the highest finishing sportsman car. Would he be considered the winner?
He would be the winning sportsman, and he would get points like he won the race.
Okay. Oh, really?
And then they had different trophies for the sportsman and different trophies for the modified at the end for the championship.
Now, was there ever a time like a guy like Parker Bone would start on the pole in a sportsman modified race and win with the sportsman, like be the first car across the line?
Parker Bone did win some races, you understand.
Yes.
With the sportsman, I don't ever remember. He was too good. I never remember him ever starting on the pole.
He could win the overall race with a sportsman car against modifieds.
Yeah. He could hold his own. I'll tell you, the hardest job I ever had was getting around him.
Oh, really?
He was fair man, and he wouldn't take you out or bump you or do nothing. But man, your tongue was hanging out by the time you passed him.
Did Parker finally make his sportsman like a modified and then race as a true modified, or was he always a sportsman car?
No, he never changed it. When the drivers and the owners got together on 1 year there, they thought, I think what I got out of it was they thought we had fuel injection, Dickie Bonney had fuel injection, and we had something we knew that they didn't know. So what they did was they had a meeting before the meeting, and they voted fuel injection out and methanol that 1 year.
Okay.
At the end of the season. So Parker Bone was yapping that he had to have methanol, and I said, I don't have a problem with you, Parker. You can have your carburetors, your methanol 6-cylinder. When I got a 448 cubic inch V8, if I can't beat you with that, shame on me. And that was fine. But all they did was they made me build a new car. My old sedan used to weigh 3,280 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So what I did was I took everything out of the car and we built the Pinto, and that brought it down to 2,600. 2610, I think the rule was then. 2610. And then I pulled the fuel injection off and I put tunnel port heads on the Ford and a different cam and a 4-valve carburetor and ran it on methanol. Well, I wasn't allowed to run methanol anymore. I ran it on gas. And I told them right at the meeting, I said, this is all you're going to do, and I'm going to be faster when I come back than I am. And I was.
But you had to build a whole new car, over one rule change. You had to build a whole new car to be faster.
You got to understand, most of the cars are fuel injected. So when they removed my fuel injection, they removed theirs. They slowed down. I went 3 or 4 tenths faster when I came back the next
Well, because all they did was remove their fuel injection, you built a whole new car.
Yeah. Well, that's what I had to do. I knew what I had to do.
Now, back then, when you said you built a Pinto car, what would you do for a chassis itself? Was it a full tube chassis, or were you using a chassis from something else?
55 Chevy.
It was a 55 Chevy chassis?
Yep.
With a Pinto body on it?
Yep.
What about the front end parts? Were they all 55 Chevy or?
No, the front end part's a straight axle. It was a 53 Ford, like an F Ford 150 axle. And then we made the suspension out of a dump truck spring. We cut one spring up and made the right and the left spring. Made them quarter elliptic and 4-bar suspension coming back with a panhard bar in the front.
So these were true modifieds, Josh. This is not like what it is today. You
Well,
had to design and make your own stuff.
That's the, everybody today buys like a Troyer chassis, and then they, which I like the, I always go back to the old IROC thing where you put it down to the driver and all the cars were the same, and I do like that. I think that's a good way to compete. But the innovation that Charlie's talking about here, where you literally were modifying a car, hence becoming a modified, I just prefer to keep the fenders on because that's me.
Josh likes fender grades cars. Now that was the front of your car. What about the back of the car? What were you doing with the back of the car? What kind of rear end were you using?
The back of the car was two semi-elliptic springs that Perth Amboy Spring made.
Okay.
Basically, they made the springs for the back of the purple number 4, and any of the cars back then that ran well, they had those springs in it.
So was that like a leaf spring then?
Yeah, it was a leaf spring, like a normal semi-elliptic. In other words, it was mounted in the front just like a normal spring, like today if you look under a Toyota.
Okay.
Okay.
And did you have different rates and stuff in them, or were you just take a leaf out to adjust the car?
I had a big I-beam, and I used to rate the spring with my tools that we had then, the weight jacker.
Yeah. So you would make like wedge bolts up then in the back of the car to adjust the car with?
Yeah, the back had wedge bolts in the back, so you move the back of the spring up or down. And the front of the car had bolts, on the quarter elliptic about 2/3 of the way back, and then it mounted right to the chassis through the side, front to back,
Right. Like kind of like a spring shackle where you would move it up and down?
In the back, yeah, the whole shackle would move up and down, right.
Okay.
No slider.
Power steering or manual steering?
Manual, I got the blisters to prove it.
That's like even today, Josh, I was looking for a big steering wheel for my dirt car because I had the stock box. I was looking for something to slow my steering down. Like I had I was with a small steering wheel. I couldn't keep up with the steering wheel. So I told Charlie my problem. And Charlie's like, he's like, I used to run a big steering wheel because he didn't have power steering back then. And he still had a steering wheel. He had a 17-inch steering wheel still on his shelf. He said, here, Scott, use this. This will help me. And I put that steering wheel on and I went out and won the race the next week.
Wow.
But Charlie, even when you got better cars later in your career, even when you were running the rack and painting cars, you still liked the bigger steering wheel, didn't you?
Yeah, but we had to get smaller. We had to go smaller, but I didn't go. I tried to keep probably about the biggest one I could fit in the car without being a problem.
Yeah, without it being into your legs and your knees and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and with the rack and pinion steering too, you had different rates of steering. You know what I mean?
Right.
You could put too fast a rate and actually would break the wheels loose when you turn in the corner. You couldn't control it. You had to slow the steering down by the ratio.
Right. That's still the way it is today. I mean, we run, normally we run quicker steering on the dirt cars and then less quicker steering with the asphalt cars. What did you use for transmissions back then?
Well, we first started off with a 3-speed Chevrolet transmission converted to the torque tube because we used in the sedan had a torque tube, like stock Ford torque tube.
Yes.
And they had a shaft coming out of the back that was modified to fit, fit the same configuration that like a 40 Ford had.
Yeah. So Josh, you following all this? Yeah.
I'm trying to take notes, but I mean, this is
a 55 Chevy frame
with the Ford
with a
straight
Ford
axle.
with a straight axle out of a Ford F-150. He had a Ford engine, but then he had to have a conversion to make it fit a Chevy transmission.
Well, now that I can relate to because when I first got my factory stock, it's the Chevy 350 that we're all using, but it had the T8, the Metric 200 trans, so it needed the adapter plate to mount up to the trans.
Right.
So I
he was basically doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, the rear ends out of those cars, Charlie's, were you using like a Franklin quick change rear back then, or were you using like a Ford 9-inch rear?
No, that was Franklin quick change all the time.
Yeah.
But the original first ones were the one that you actually bolted the spot bells to, the smaller one, the smaller original first rears that they made.
Now after your Pinto, moving your career ahead a little bit further, I remember, I think it was probably 82 or 83. My brother remembers this too. We remember you showing up at the racetrack with a brand new, beautiful Troyer Cavalier. What year was that?
I think that was 82.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that car, wasn't one of your Pintos an old Evans car or a Sonny Seaman chassis?
Yeah, the Pinto, when I drove Alan Harvey's car, I was just about unbeatable. And Sonny Seaman built the car, and we actually sent our car up there against the thing. He actually built the whole car. But,
Sonny Seaman did, right? And Sonny Seaman's the guy that taught Richie Evans pretty much how to build race car chassis.
When we got it back, it didn't handle anything like the X9.
Oh, no?
And then we find out that he doesn't have a way of building a car. He just puts it together.
So he had no jigs or nothing like that, so every car was a little bit different than the last one?
Yeah, it was a little different, so I had to cut it apart a couple times and get it where I had to do. But back then, we were kind of learning at the same time. We didn't have all the knowledge we have now.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to imagine Scott, cutting his car apart and like tweaking the frame a little bit because it didn't drive right.
Yeah, at my age, Josh, I caught the tail end of what Charlie's talking about building the race cars, right. And half the fun of racing back then was building the car. And I just remember half the fun of like opening night at the racetrack is seeing what everybody built over the winter. That was half the fun of the racing.
And then we just had a garage and we just worked for a living, like we do now. But we had to build everything. If we had to buy everything, we wouldn't have been racing.
Right.
So
yeah, because you guys had the engine work and everything.
We built everything, and you show up there, and then you go out, and you got guys with more money than you have, and if you can beat them, you feel good.
Yeah. Well, come 1982, you did purchase a store-bought car. You did buy an 82 Troyer car. What was the idea of buying a Troyer car?
Well, I never had one. I just, we decided to buy one and see what it was like. So, and actually, before I we kind of got together with Ray Abraham there, and I went almost into the grandstands. But if you ever remember that race, I got tangled up with somebody on the first lap. And I had to go to the end of the line, which was like 21st or something like that. And I was passing, whenever him and I got together, I was passing him for 5th on the 5th lap.
Was that the first race in that car when it got wrecked?
No, it was actually not painted the first race. It was black.
Oh, really? Oh, man, I'd love to see a picture of that.
Might have been the second or the third race. And then I remember that thing was flying.
Now, was that still a big block, or were you to the small block engine?
Well, that was a big block, yeah.
That was a big block Chevy?
Yep.
Now, that was a funny story. I remember that accident, and you're kind of saying it nicely, but I think Abraham had a lot more to do with that wreck than you did. Can you explain what happened to us in that wreck?
We solved our differences. There's no problem.
Charlie told me a pretty cool story. He was actually in North Carolina, Josh. He went on the tour of Hendrick Motorsports when Ray Abraham was the big crew chief down there.
Right.
And someone told Ray that Charlie was there taking the tour of the garage, and Ray said, "Get that guy in my office." And Ray actually pulled Charlie into his office, and they talked about that wreck, and they settled their differences that day at the Hendrick Motorsports shop.
Now, how many years out was that from the incident?
There was
that was
from
about-
'82 to
that's a number of years after that. I guess it was bothering him over a course of time. And guess what? He's a bigger man than most.
Well, that's good.
So-
That's good. A few
So Josh,
decades
figure
later.
like 20 years later, Everhand was still bothered in that accident. Because Josh, that was a scary accident. It was right on the front straightaway. Like Charlie said, he almost went into the grandstands. Like, I think he hit right by the flagger stand and knocked forward into the grandstand.
Yeah, I actually hit the fence about halfway to the start-finish line, and the pole behind the fence actually went right through the bumper, right through the radiator, and hit the motor.
Wow.
And then a 10-foot section of the fence went in the grandstand. Actually, luckily, it only just tapped one of the young kids there. It didn't hurt him bad, but he rode with me in the ambulance to the hospital.
Oh, that kid had some story to tell that night. He rode into the hospital in the ambulance with Charlie Kremer Jr.
And I know him today.
You really?
I know who our next guest is.
We're not going to look at the kid that got hit by the guardrail in the Charlie Kremer wreck. Charlie, you were injured in that wreck, weren't you?
What's that? Yeah,
Were you injured in that wreck?
It it kind of lit up my arm through the neck. I guess one of the nerves got pinched in my neck, and it lit up my arm. So it took about a year to get back in shape again.
So it was an arm injury in that wreck. Then I always heard it was like a neck injury or maybe even a head injury.
Well, yeah, when it snapped my neck. I mean, when it hit the wall and snapped off the wall, it snapped my head so hard. Probably pinched the nerve in the back, and then that nerve was going down my right arm.
Because I remember it took you a while to come back to racing after that wreck. Was there any thought about retiring after that accident?
No matter what anybody says, when you have a really bad accident, you always feel like, why am I doing this? And then after a while, what you feel like is, I'm doing this because I like it. And, one of the effects of this whole thing, if you get in an accident, you can be killed. And you have to accept that if you're going to do this.
Was that car ever repaired? Did you race that car again?
Yeah, I did, but I actually put it together. My father got a little upset, and he never brought it out himself. I brought it out after he passed away.
Oh, okay. So the car was repaired and you did race it again?
Yep.
Did it need a front clip and all that stuff?
You bet.
Was the engine damaged in the accident too?
No, we took it apart. Nothing. We had everything Magnaflux. It was all okay. Put it back together.
Now, was that the last Kremer 77 car that you owned? Because after that, I remember you driving for other people.
Yeah, then I drove Caracaras. He bought an older 14. I think the one that Tony Siscone got
Burned in, right?
burnt in, yes. And
yeah, that was the car that Tony Siscone wrecked in Martinsville and burned his hands real bad in. But they rebuilt that car and it came out beautiful again. And I remember Caracaras buying it. And basically they left it red and everything. They just made the 1 into an 8. The car was the number 84.
Yep, that's what they did. But they, they only knew what Barney gave them, and that's the way they just swapped the shocks and springs and put it together, and they were learning. But the car ran well enough.
You won in that car though, right? I remember you winning in that car.
Yeah, I won the second time I drove it at Wall Stadium, and I was leading the race at New Egypt the night before, but the right rear wheel bearing was going bad, and I slowed down a little bit, and Evans and Siscone got by me before the end of the race.
Did you ever win at New Egypt Speedway?
New Egypt? No, I don't think so. I think the closest I got was in a Pro 4, and it was second.
Oh, yeah. Tim, we forgot about that whole segment. I forgot
Yeah,
you made
we
mini
never
modified cars for a while too.
Yeah.
Before we get to the mini modifieds, and before we get at it, I also want to say, Josh, Charlie also ran at tracks with the modifieds. He raced at Pocono on the 2.5 mile track.
Okay.
He raced at Trent.
I
He
wondered,
ran at Trenton Speedway.
I wondered
Yeah,
what Langhorne was like.
Charlie, did you ever race Langhorne?
Yep,
What was that like?
crazy. It was. I remember running behind Ray
Hendrick?
Hendrick, yeah, Ray Hendrick. And about the second or third time I was there, I think I qualified. The first time I went there, I qualified fourth. In the
Wow, that's
time
really
trial.
good.
But I'll tell you what, first time I went around there the day before warming up, I was sitting up in the seats because it was a really tough racetrack to get some kind of used to. But next day I got a little bit more comfortable, so it came out good that way.
Were you in the throttle all the way around there?
Not all the way around. You can't. You kind of like running as hard as you can, but you're not down all the way. The only place I was really down all the way is like the back straightaway.
Because that was a big circle, right? That track was just like a big circle.
Yeah. It's like a big D, and then after you came around the front of the grandstands and down around, the sharpest corner was the one just before the long straightaway. So so you had to slow it down a little bit, get around through that corner, and then get going down the straightaway again.
Yeah, Josh, he also raced at Trenton Speedway that had that crazy dog leg on the back straightaway. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was you had to really learn how to drive that thing, and I actually was following Bodine, Jeff Bodine in the '99. I was following him, and he kind of showed me a path. And then after he showed me what he was doing, then I did what I was doing, and I modified it a little bit. It was like basically you had to stay on the inside of the racetrack going down the back straightaway. Everybody was going towards the wall, towards the outside to make the right-hand turn. You didn't do that. You stayed up on the top and then ran down the inside till you hit the banking, which was 7 lanes wide. And when you hit the banking, you didn't lift. You just stayed on the gas right up until you almost hit the wall at the top and halfway through the corner, and then you ran down the hill.
Now, Charlie, what did you do to your car when you went to Trent? Because now you're making a right-hand turn on the back straightaway. Were you losing oil pressure through that section of the track? I think I remember people used to go to like an AccuSump system that try to keep the oil pressure up when they made the right-hand turn.
Yeah, that you had to do something with the oil pan because that one turn you would lose the oil pressure. So we were messing with. We had a pickup screen that could move right or left.
Inside the pan?
In other words, if you turned the one way, it would move over to the outside, and turn the other way, it would go to the other way, to the outside.
Oh, okay. Off the oil pump inside the oil pan, right?
Yeah, at the
Yeah.
bottom of that shaft, I think it could like swivel a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a pretty good idea. And then when you go to after that race weekend was over, you would have to change that to go put the oil pump back the way it was to go through a regular oval track.
Yeah, I changed the pan, you didn't need that anyplace else.
Right.
So, as far as the setup of the car, we never raced any other long track like that. We only raced a few times a year that way. So we really didn't have another setup, say, for the car. The car was pretty good the way it was. And with the right-hand turn, the pinhead bar was only like 1 inch away from hitting the frame on the left side. So when we went through that corner, we'd lay down on the mounting bracket on the axle. It would kind of like wedge the car the other way.
Now, Charlie, Josh's family, they really enjoy every year going down to Dover Speedway to watch the Cup cars. And I always tell Josh that the modifieds used to race there back in the day. That was one of the trips you would make every once in a while too, right? With your modified and race at Dover?
Yeah, we did race there.
That track must have been crazy fast too with a modified.
It was. That was before they had any other kind of races going on there. Even Pocono, that was the deal. But that was, we went down in Dover a couple of times, and I think the last time we raced there, that's when the number one there,
Charlie Jazonda.
Charlie Kremer wrapped himself in the fence off of two,
Yes.
about 10 feet up in the air in the fence.
Didn't you guys all thought he was dead too, didn't you?
Yeah, well, he was okay. That
Yeah,
time.
he was okay. He raced again. Because you said
But
Charlie Jazon back in the day, he used to build like super light race cars too. That's another reason why everybody was scared when he was stuck up in that catch fence.
Right. And well, if the sucker ever went on fire, oh my God, that'd have been horrible.
Did your car finish that race, or did you break in that race?
I think we finished there. You know, I was up in the top 7 or something like that. Langhorne the same way. We were always in the top 7, somewhere around there.
Did you
Which is
ever
really
race
good to
over
say,
it?
because back then they'd start 50 cars, you know, and 100 would show up on a weekend. You know what I'm saying? So,
What was that, Tim?
Did you ever race Oldbridge?
Yeah, before I started the race at Wall, I drove, I raced against Flemke, the father, and he blew up in front of me, and we kind of like hit the wall, and he was out of the car first, come right over and said, "How you doing? You okay?" he was worried. He was worried about whether I was okay rather than how my car was or his car was.
Did you ever race in Connecticut anywhere?
What's that?
Ever race in Connecticut, like Thompson or Stafford or anything?
Yeah, I did race at Stafford and Thompson.
All right,
that's pretty
Tim.
amazing. You did quite a bit of traveling while you were still running your auto repair business. You know, it seemed like you guys raced a lot. Were you ever part of that Eastern Bandits thing or the All-Star Racing League or anything like that?
Yeah, I think we were the All-Star Racing League. We used to do that, and then they had I think Charlie Roberts used to do a championship thing around in all the racetracks in New Jersey or something.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember
like the
that?
New Jersey State Championship Series.
Yeah, I ran Wall Stadium all year, and I was leading it when Wall Stadium closed. Then I had to go to New Egypt and run there. Then I had to go to Atlantic City and run there. I think I blew it, ended up second, and I was like 6 points ahead of him at the end of that.
Oh, that's cool. So, but it forced you to race a little bit more after Wall Stadium closed, chasing points to win that championship.
Yep.
My brother just touched on it a little bit, and I actually forgot about it, but now I do remember. I remember you leaving the full-blown modifieds and racing the mini modifieds for a little while. Can you tell us how that deal came about?
Actually, I was working for Bob Sepintelli. He had been putting the car together for his son. And after he ran a couple of years there, that he had a new car that he bought that always ran well in Connecticut, but it never would finish a race. And he bought that car, and he started. We built it over the winter time, and his son at that time was going out with a girl at that point, and he was going to get married, and she didn't want him to race anymore. So we're lettering the car. The guy is in there lettering the car, and he says to me, I had no clue what was going on. He says, we're going to letter the car. You're going to put his name on it. How do you want it on the roof? He goes, I got a problem. I said, Julie don't want him to race anymore. I said, okay, so who's driving the car? I said, you want to drive it? I said, okay, I'll drive it. That's how that came about.
And you won quite a few races with that car. Did you enjoy racing the mini modifieds?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. There was like 200 horsepower, 1,700 pounds. It was a lot of fun. I think I won 7 out of 12, and the first couple of races we had to flog the car. When he bought the car, it came with 5 camshafts, the same grind. They said, boy, we got a problem here. I know that. So we wore the camshaft out the first night, and we put another one in, wore that one out, and I had to sit down and figure out what's going on here. And I found out the oiling on the stock Pinto 2000 motor was on the wrong side of the cam. So we turned that around, put it on the other side. So that's how they built the motor. So we had to make something that worked and put that on the other side. After that, it was the cam looked like chrome. After that, the whole rest of the season.
Yeah, I remember that too. The hot ticket with those motors were like the Ford Escort motor or Ford Pinto motor or something like that. Or what was it, a Ford 2000 or something like that?
Yeah, mine was a 2000. Yeah, we turned that thing 9600.
I know, and those guys were spending big money on those little motors, even though they're a little four-cylinder engine. They were putting big money into them so they can turn those type of RPMs back then.
Mm-hmm.
That was a whole tour too, wasn't it? So you must have went up to Connecticut with that car too, then, right?
The year before, we had a Datsun, and Bob Subtelli's son, he went there, he ran Thompson, and I think he finished in the top 7.
So you mostly ran it at New Egypt Speedway then?
Yeah, mostly New Egypt, yeah.
Yeah, I always
ran
enjoyed
it.
that you raced that little car. It gave us something to watch when those cars came out on the track because we knew you as a modified driver with some of the other guys we didn't really know that much. So it was cool seeing you race that car and watching you win in it too.
Well, once I got it handling well, it doesn't have enough power. And once you got the car really balanced well, if you've noticed, it had a flame coming out once in a while,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden it'd go away. And it wouldn't be coming out anymore. That's because it was on the floor all the way around.
Yeah,
the
you weren't lifted. You weren't letting it breathe to shoot a flame out.
Yeah, Tony Sistone was standing next to my crew chief, and he goes, "How come the flame comes out the first couple of laps, and then after that it goes away?" He said, "But left." He said, "But you can't do that."
Well, once the tires got hot, you got to the track, to the point of the track where there was no other cars around. You could just hold the thing wide open.
Yeah.
All right, and then move back to the modifieds. But then the modifieds changed a little bit too when you went back modified racing. I remember when you coming back in the McGill Purple 58 car. That was a 2-barrel modified, right? That wasn't the full modifieds.
Yeah, 2-barrel modified. We had to run the stock iron intake manifold and the stock iron heads and all of that, which is fine. I look at it as an advantage at that point because all you have to do is do the car a little bit better and drive a little bit better, and they're done.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, that was later in your career, and I remember you coming back, and you were almost unbeatable in that car, too. Wasn't that an old Dick Barney car as well?
What was that? I missed that.
Wasn't that an old Dick Barney car as well? Wasn't that a Raceworks car?
Yeah.
The Purple 58, right?
Yeah, that was the one that was, yeah. I think that's the one that won Martinsville then.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Yeah, I remember that car and you driving it and winning quite a bit with that car. All right, Charlie, it's getting a little bit later. We really appreciate you coming on and talking about your racing career. We don't want to keep you too long. We just want to say thank you for coming on. We really enjoyed you having you on the show.
Alrighty, and to everybody, stay healthy, keep the distance, do what Trump says.
Yeah, definitely. We're doing that. We're definitely trying to. And I know Charlie's true, too, because I tow for him, and I usually just walk right in the shop and talk to those guys. They're working under lockdown. They got the doors shut, the doors locked, and basically leave the keys on the front porch and get out of here. All right, Charlie, you stay healthy, and we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Take a break, Josh?
Yeah, sure.